Welcome back to the channel. Day one of the Olympic Sevens is done and dusted. I've been sat here watching every game, covering it, unfortunately, not from the Stade de France in Paris. I've been in this booth, I've got all my notes, I've got all sorts of things happening here because I've been sat here all afternoon in the UK covering it. And that's what I thought I would talk about in this video. Who do you think are the favourites? Who's looked the most impressive? What are the big storylines to take from day one? Have your say in the comment section if you have watched it. I'll be interested to see how this video does. I would imagine it's going to be a lot more of a niche, but you never know. A lot of countries involved, a lot of different fan bases might be engaged by it. So do let me know if you like this sort of content. And also, whilst you're here, like the video and subscribe to the channel. So I'll try and go through everything. I haven't actually made any notes. I've been so busy working that the final game's just finished. I thought I would set up my camera and record a little video. For me, the headline from the opening day in terms of the favourites is Fiji and New Zealand are going to take some beating. I think they comfortably look like the best two teams on the opening day, in my opinion. You look at their results, they were pretty comprehensive. I know 17-5 for New Zealand in that final game, but even so, they look very, very good. Fiji blew Uruguay away, blew the USA away. The gold medalists in Fiji from the last two Olympics, the silver medalists in New Zealand from Tokyo, I think they are going to take some beating. It was just how slick they were. Like, they just looked, I thought, that fraction sharper than a lot of the other teams. We will see how they fare down the line when they get tested more. But overall, I thought it was a pretty impressive day for both of those nations. In particular, from a New Zealand point of view, both of those sides, by the way, are packed full of quality. We know that. But I just wanted to mention a couple of players on the New Zealand side. Feihi Finiango Nofo was immense. He was absolutely blockbuster. And then the other guy who I know is incredibly highly thought of, let me find the name here. I've completely lost it all of a sudden. It'll come back to me in just a second. But New Zealand overall, very, very good, very, very impressive. And Fiji as well. The one team that I want to give an honourable mention to is Ireland. Because Ireland were kind of late. If you look at the history of sevens in Ireland, they were kind of later to really start putting resources into the men's side. I think it was around 2010 or something like that. And they have slowly kind of been climbing up the rankings. Their performances in the Sevens World Series have steadily improved. And I thought they had a great opening day. They have also qualified. They beat South Africa, tight game in their first game, absolutely crucial to get a result there. And then they were comprehensive in beating Japan as well. So they have qualified. And I just thought they looked really, really good, I thought. For a lot of that opening game against South Africa, I think the South African defence, and actually, given the amount of defending they've had to do against Ireland and against New Zealand, was really, really good. But yeah, I just like what I've seen from Ireland on the first day. They are probably one of those teams, and I'm going to come on to a team that's disappointed in France in just a second, but a team that I think will sit at the end of the first day and in that Olympic village look around and think, do you know what? A medal is possible here. You never know what the draw is going to do and fatigue sets in and all that sort of thing, but I think they'll be confident of that. I think a medaling is very, very possible for them. Let's speak about the French, though. So they drew against the USA in their first game, and then they beat Uruguay just by a score. Uruguay had the ball at the end of that game, and eventually France got the penalty in their own 22. If they'd scored there, if that had ended up as a draw, or even if Uruguay had beaten them, which they were earlier in the game, that would have been a seismic result, really. And France, I think, it's been a stutter. It's been a real stutter of a start. They haven't looked all that impressive. Antoine Dupont scored an absolute worldie of a try in that Uruguay game, swatting away about three defenders. But just in the way that I said about Fiji and New Zealand and how slick they looked and how they looked like a team that were just clicking. They knew where their teammates were going to be, the offloads were going. They looked so slick. I thought France were the opposite. And in the first game, in that draw against the US, I didn't know whether it was a bit of nerves. Home Olympics, Stade de France packed out, the first French team that we're seeing play, whether there just be that little bit of nerves, and that could be why. But they were similar against Uruguay, so I don't know what the story is. I don't know whether they will look to improve as they go through it. They should still qualify. So they've got to play... They've got to play Fiji tomorrow, don't they? And the US should beat Uruguay. So it might come down to bonus points. But even if France don't win, they should get one of the quarter-final spots because of the two best third-place teams getting themselves into the quarter-final. So I think France will still be there. But they're going to give themselves a much harder route. If they end up as one of the best third-place teams, then you're looking at a Fiji, well, not a Fiji because they're in the same group. You're looking at a New Zealand or one of the top teams early on in the knockout rounds. Could be difficult for them. Interesting one to keep an eye on. The one pool that I haven't mentioned particularly is Argentina and Australia, who those two teams have gone 2 from 2. They've won their games. They'll play each other tomorrow to decide who tops the group, essentially, and who has the better seeding. They're probably the ones that maybe at the moment are going under the radar because Fiji and New Zealand, I think people like me will speak about because of how impressive they were. France are a storyline because on paper, I think that New Zealand, Ireland, South Africa group looks tougher, I would imagine. Most people would agree with, so therefore they'll speak about Ireland. No one's really mentioning, I don't think, Argentina and Australia. Argentina obviously great in the Sevens World Series, finishing top of the pile. Maybe they're just going to slip under the radar a little bit. And the same for the Aussies. Australia never done that well at the Olympics, really. I think like 7th, 8th, they've always come around that sort of mark. So they'll be looking to kick on for sure. And actually did a pretty good job. Did what they needed to do against Samoa and Kenya. Didn't blow them away. I think 21-14 and 21-7 maybe, or 21-12, something like that, the two scorelines. In fact, I've got, 21-14 against Samoa and 21-7 against Kenya. So they did what they needed to do without being blockbuster. But for both of those teams, I think they'll be very, very happy with how they're tracking. I will leave it there for the first day. It's funny, isn't it, with the Sevens? I've watched so many games today, been making kind of notes as I've gone. I've got the scores there, trying to remember bits and bobs. That is what stuck out to me. Fiji and New Zealand, comfortably, as we probably expected, look the best teams. I'm impressed with Ireland. I think they'll be quietly confident. What is going on with France? That would be my kind of headlines from the first day at the Sevens, which looked awesome. I suppose that could be the final thing to finish on. You often talk about what should be Olympic sports and where does Sevens fit in kind of the world rugby and how it works and the attention it gets. But I think it absolutely has a great place at the Olympics. I think it's a shame that this is getting a bit buried before the opening ceremony. There'll be a lot of people that won't know it's on. I know in the UK, I think it was on Eurosport or like a Eurosport red button, so it had been harder for people to find. I think that is all an issue, but nonetheless, I think it's great, particularly when you see teams like Kenya and Uruguay competing, where we don't necessarily always see them in the World Cup. China, for example, are competing in the women's, which gets underway on Sunday. There is a space for Sevens. A sold-out Stade de France in the sun in Paris. I think it's going to be a great Olympics, and I think we've had a great day of Sevens. So put your comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.